Hey, what's up? Lightboltjoe here. Today we are going to discuss the brand new book by Uncle Rick Riordan, Daughter of the Deep. Came out October 2021, so I just read it 2 months after. 336 pages long. I love this book. I especially love this book because there's 63 chapters in 336 pages, and they're like 4, 5, 6 pages each per chapter. Love it. Keeps my attention span. I feel like I've accomplished more as opposed to the 20 or 30 page chapters that we're used to with Uncle Rick Riordan's, I'm just going to use that term, previous books, which I love the books, but my attention span's short. So to have short chapters in a book, in a full length chapter book, I feel a lot more accomplished. Okay, so Daughter of the Deep. This was announced years ago. He has been planning this book since like summer 2008. I think that's what the little blurb in the front of this book is. When he was doing press junkets in Italy for Percy Jackson, the Olympians, the Battle of the Labyrinth. Because Disney execs asked him, they're like, well, what book? I'm gonna put this down now. What, like, property of ours, of Disney's, do you want to, write for? And he said 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. That film came out in 1954. I had to look this up. And it's based off of Jules Verne's best-selling novel, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which came out in 1870-something, 74, I think, which then had a sequel, Mysterious Island. But Jules Verne is also known for Around the World in 80 Days. 80 Days? Around the World in 80 Days? That sounds correct. He's one of the founding folk of science fiction, but also spurred a lot of what he wrote about is actual science now. So it's that whole magic is just science we haven't figured out yet. And like Jules Verne is a founder of that. L. Frank Baum I credit a lot of. We have to review his 14 Oz books. I'm pointing because they're over there. That's on our docket for 2022. If we can do all 14 books in 2022, amazing. Amongst the other reviews of other books and things. So anyway, it's a well-known book. It's a well-known sequel. It's a well-known movie. It was a ride in Disneyland for quite some time until Finding Nemo's submarine adventure. That took over for 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Just to keep everything relevant. And Daughter of the Deep was announced, and we were all freaking out because we're like, oh, another Rick Riordan book. Not that we really have any idea that much about 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, aside from the books, aside from the film. So we're like, well, how can he possibly make this modern? Well, let me tell you. You have the descendants of Prince Dakar, who is Captain Nemo of the Nautilus, which is the submarine, Anna Dakar and Dev Dakar. They are both students at Harding Pencroft Academy in Southern California. It's a naval academy. There's 4 houses, cephalopod, dolphin, orca, shark. They all do their own things. They're all descendants of, folk. But there's also a rival school, Land Institute. And so, like, they have their battles and prank wars and stuff. How everything comes about is 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and Mysterious Island were just retellings, according to the book, are just retellings of Verne from the actual Prince Dakar, from the actual, real-life people that he based the books off of. So it's really not, he put a fictitious spin on nonfiction accounts, which is pretty neat, throwing it in the little twist of it. So to have it in a real life aspect, like we have tech now because of Prince Dakar's, tech from the 1870s. Microwaves are like from the Nautilus because of Prince Dakar, things like that. It's pretty neat. It's pretty neat when you put that historical spin on fiction, but to bring it to a nonfiction scent, I love it. So the book is all fluffy and like, yay, school. And then like, Harding Pencroft Academy is blown up by torpedoes. And we have 20 freshmen, Anna Dakar is one of them, on a yacht basically trying to get to they're doing like freshman trials, kind of like a final report kind of a thing. But like now they're being hunted down by these Land Institute people who are not doing pranks anymore. They're actually out to kill. And you're like, oh my God, shift change. So it's a matter of why are they trying to kill all these people, and then eventually they're trying to just kill everybody but save Anna. And like, what's so special about Anna? So they eventually get to Lincoln Base, which is one of the bases that Prince Dakar, would travel to in the Pacific. And the Nautilus was found to be under Lincoln Base. Now we know this only because there's people still on Lincoln Base. We know the Nautilus is there. We know that Anna's parents, her dad is the biological descendant of Prince Dakar. They were both killed by the boat, by the Nautilus. So Dev and Anna have been parentless for 2 years, but it's still presumed that Dev died in the explosion of Harding Pencroft. So things go and, sea adventures and, mourning and stuff. Rick just writes real characters, people dealing with stress, people dealing with PTSD, people dealing with depression. You have this autistic girl who has empathy problems, who she has an emotional support little floofy dog. It brings another sense of realism. It's important. Representation matters. I spew this constantly with all Rick's books, with all his Rick Riordan Presents books. Representation matters. Beautiful. So it's a matter of now Anna's trying to figure out what to do, because her DNA is coded to the Nautilus. So how can she forgive a ship that killed her parents, but also in the long run, try to figure out why this Aronnax other ship from Land Institute is trying to defeat them as well. Turns out her brother is not dead. Turns out Dev is leading the Aronnax to defeat the rest of the Harding Pencroft kids, to steal Anna away, to then take the Nautilus for his birthright inheritance. That's not really the thing. Like, yeah, their DNA can code it, but the Nautilus is for everyone. So there's fights in the lagoon. There's, a dolphin named Socrates. There's a baboon named Jupiter. All of these things, beautiful things. He's watching The Great British Bake Off, one of my absolute favorite shows on Netflix. Absolutely hysterical that I know everything that they're talking about. So the Nautilus doesn't do a hyperspeed or light speed as we're used to hearing for like space stuff. I forget the term, but they have this air around the nose, and then they can just shoot through the water, and it takes them 3 hours to get from point A to point B, something like that. Instead of weeks, it'll take them a few hours, and they eventually wind up in the Philippine Sea, where they face off against this gigantic cephalopod octopus. So we have Gemini Twain here, we have Anna Dakar, we have the Nautilus here, we have the octopus they later name as Romeo, because Romeo is attracted to the electrical currents and the coloring of the Nautilus. So then Anna learns to speak through color and sound and vibrations and electricity and light. And it was very much Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Reminded me a lot of that. And I thought that was so cool, throwing that different spin, that language isn't just about verbal or physicality if you're using American Sign Language. There's other aspects of language, and we talk about it. It's so cool, bro. It's so cool. So then they all hyperspeed, which is not the term, but they all hyperspeed. Romeo attached, the octopus, back to Land Institute, not to Land Institute, to Lincoln Base, to face off against the Aronnax to defeat. Well, then Romeo is now attracted to the Aronnax, so he destroys the Aronnax. All the Land Institute senior classes, taken as prisoners on Lincoln Base. And Anna and Dev eventually have their fighting moments and physical fighting moments. But then there's a flash forward, and then there's, Anna lets the Land Institute kids go. But she keeps Dev, and she she takes Dev in the Nautilus, because he's technically a Dakar, so his DNA is her DNA, and he can still technically open doors and command the ship, but the ship doesn't like him currently, because he tried to kill the ship, in a sense. So they both go into the ship. The Nautilus takes them down to the gardens where Prince Dakar's ashes were spread, thanks to the Lincoln Base's folk that were there already, helping clean up the Nautilus. That's also where their parents' ashes were spread. So Dev just breaks down, falls to his knees crying. Anna, is there in that moment with him. They never got a chance to mourn their parents together. So here they are at the ash site, the burial site of their great fourth grandfather, Prince Dakar, aka Captain Nemo. Anna Dakar is now the new Captain Nemo. Anna Dakar, being with her brother, being able to mourn, being able to try to forgive of all the horribleness that he's, created for her and her friends. It's just now a matter of moving forward. All the treasure in the Nautilus is going to be used from Esther to build a new Harding Pencroft Academy. And Harding Pencroft Academy reminded me so much at first of the Pirate Academy in Justin Sumper's Vampire books. Absolutely loved it. A whole naval academy at the sea. Why not? It's just beautiful. Absolutely loved it. So this book is really cool. It was really nice having that representation matters aspect, but also like you have an Indian character learning to speak Bundili, or I pronounced that word wrong, and to use certain cultural aspects based off of Prince Dakar's cultural aspects when he was a prince of India fighting against the English Empire, the Queen Victoria led English Empire, who were, you know, taking control of countries back then. So as I drop other books, awesome book. It's a one-off. It can definitely lead into other books, but I think Rick announced it's only just a one-off. This is becoming a movie. I think it's going to be a Disney Plus film 4 or 5 years from now, something like that. But yeah, Daughter of the Deep, Rick Riordan. Give it a read. Mucho mahalo.